Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen. I just have one quick question here, Joe. Is the fact that this screen is black, is that a problem? I mean, yeah, I just didn't know. Okay. So were we?
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Anyway, it's Monday, and it's the 16th of September. And there it's all back. There we go. Okay, they were trying to get us, the bad people. Donald says that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all the good people in the world are trying to destroy everybody, including him. That he's being assassinated, or there are attempts to assassinate him every other week because of Joe Biden. And yeah, all those terrible people were all responsible for this. Yeah. Anyway, it is Monday the 16th. And with that in mind, by the way, I was listening to a program on the way in here, and that program had a woman adjunct professor. She was obviously liberal. And she was explaining that we're all responsible for this. All the shooting, all the violence, all the terrible things happening at schools to kids, and just every bit of it. I mean, we're all responsible. There's only one problem. We're not responsible. We're not responsible for any of it. Donald Trump is wildly responsible. That's no joke. He's responsible for every bit of this, for people coming after him, for people coming after children, for people going after judges and jurors and everybody, poll workers. That's Donald Trump. That's his responsibility. That's what he's caused in this country. Now, the good news is you'll have none of this anymore, or at least not his words, after, say, probably November 10th or 11th. The reason I put it out that far is because Kamala Harris will win the election on the 5th. And it'll be clear. It'll be a clear victory. We can look at the various states today. So, the Electoral College, we can look there. And we can see that Donald is losing everywhere. Now, it is a tie in North Carolina. But remember that North Carolina was way down, and it has come up now to a tie. Last week it was -1. Now it's a tie. Get this one. And this one will tell you exactly what you need to know. A few weeks ago, maybe a month, Iowa was -18 for the Democrats. -18. And you would expect that, because Iowans are very conservative. They're rural people, and they're going to vote for Republicans, just like Missouri will. But guess what? Kamala is surging in Iowa and is now -4. So she's gone from -18 to -4. Now, you could say, well, it might be -6. Well, it might be. Or it might be -2. Because the truth is Kamala, as I've said so many times, is on fire with enthusiasm across this country. Nevada for Kamala. Arizona and what was the other one? There was one more. The Arizona, well, whichever one it was, -1 for Kamala. She was down 1. But these are all places where the Democrats were way behind. And the numbers are just dramatically pushing in the direction of Kamala Harris. Now, if you go to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, a little less, but still all in the Kamala Harris side. And you realize all you need is Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and the entire election is over. And right now, all 3 are on Kamala Harris's side. All 3. End of the discussion. Election's over. Just on those 3. Now, you start bringing in these other states, well, then you're talking about a real number. I mean, it could be instead of 305, I mean, you could be looking at 325, 335. But the problem for Donald is that he just doesn't know the difference between his idiotic comments and reality. Because that's, the Earth 1, Earth 2 discussion. He lives in Earth 2 or maybe somewhere else. I don't know. But his people live on Earth 2 and they have everything wrong. They know nothing. Absolutely nothing. They think that everything that Donald says is true and they believe every word of it. The greatest liar on this planet. And they believe every word. How about this one? When I watched this over the weekend, I was just chuckling. I mean, I was laughing. He gets in front of the camera and he goes, "They're eating the dogs." Honestly, they're eating the dogs. And you would assume that he knows not only that he made this up, but that J.D. Vance knows that they made this up. Now, he probably didn't expect J.D. Vance to get on national television over the weekend and confess. He confessed. This is not an exaggeration. J.D. Vance got in front of the cameras, and I listened to him, and I've listened to the replays because everybody is in shock. How dumb can you be? If you're going to say these things, don't confess. So he gets in front of the camera and he says that if they have to create stories in order to get the media to look at the issues that they think is important, he said they will do it all the time. Because he was asked about the veracity of this idiotic dog and cat story, and he admitted, we made it up. Made it up in order to help drive the public to a point of view that's not grounded in anything factual. And again, how do we know? Because J.D. Vance told us. He confessed. Now, I will say that as a professor who has taught at the university level many classes about the Constitution, constitutional law, and issues related to the courts, that we always talk about the fact that there are people who do confess to things that they haven't done. Now, that's a fact. That's something that happens. People confess, and they didn't do it, but they do confess. And there are all kinds of reasons for why they do. But I promise you, this was not one of those kind of confessions. This was just a run-of-the-mill, we did it confession. They made it up. All that dog stuff, all the cat stuff, all the geese business, made up. Look, even my brothers, liberals, were explaining to me that a guy was walking down the street with a couple of geese. So apparently it is possible that some of this happened and that there were people like this guy walking around with the geese. Only one problem with that. It wasn't in Springfield, Ohio. It was, number one, somewhere else. Number two, the guy wasn't Haitian. And number three, these geese were killed in the street. They were run over by a car. And the guy picked up the geese to move them out of the street. Now, I mean, Donald has confessed, you all. It's all a lie. Donald says it's a lie. Well, J.D. Vance says it's a lie. Now, I don't know. Maybe Donald will fire him tomorrow. J.D. Vance said they made this up in order to get the media to focus on the immigration issue. That's why they made it up. If the man confessed, what are we talking about? He says, we did it. We made it up. And yet, there are still millions of people who refuse to believe it. They will not accept the confession. They are absolutely sure that this is all true. Never happened. Listen, the governor of Ohio, who is Republican, he said, this is a piece of trash. It never happened. J.D. Vance says, I did it. I confess. The city manager of Springfield, Ohio, says it never happened. There's no such story. It did not happen. And millions of people will follow Donald anyway, and they'll follow him anywhere, even when they know it's not true. So you figure that one out. Well, actually, I can figure it out. And I mentioned this last week, and I really need to go back to it. I talked to a friend of mine out in California, a friend whose family escaped from Germany. And absolutely, without a doubt, there were people in Germany who said, and I'm talking about Jews now, Hitler won't do it. No way he's going to. He's just talking. Hitler won't do this. And he certainly won't do it to us, because he might do it to the Polish Jews, and he might do it to Lithuanian Jews. He might do it to Ukrainian Jews. He might do it to anybody, but he's not going to do it to the Germans because we are Germans. This is the same business, same story. In fact, interestingly enough, it turns out that the original people that started this ridiculous story were neo-Nazis. These neo-Nazi groups who love Trump. They'll follow him to the end of the earth. They started the story about the dogs and cats. No dogs have been eaten. No cats have been eaten. The geese are not being stolen. Nothing is happening. And you've been told we made it up. We did it because we have a higher goal that needs to be achieved. And as long as we have these goals that need to be achieved, we're going to keep doing this. If it's necessary, we'll do it for the benefit of the country. And people will believe it. Just like they believed that Hillary was eating children in the basement of the pizzeria. Earth 1, Earth 2. You would think that there would be some people out here who would be a little embarrassed and say, come on, how did we go for this? But this friend of mine and I out in California who were talking about his family getting out of Germany, I mean, the question has always been, how could the German people have done this? How could they have followed Adolf Hitler? What possessed them to do this? I mean, you could joke and say it's in the water or whatever. You could point to the fact that Germany has done bad things for a long time and say, well, now they're just doing another one of these things. But nah, it's not really that. Because here we're going through the same thing. Because you would have to say or ask, how could the American people, how could they follow this mess? How could they go down this road? Hating journalism, fearing the people who work in our government, who take civil service exams and then are paid basically substandard pay, but they don't care because they really want to work for the benefit of the American people because they love their country. Like Kamala Harris loves her country. Like all of those people who go to those rallies love the country. I have to tell you, I have many problems with all of that. And that's liberals. Those are liberals. I'm not a liberal. I've never been a liberal. I've always said radical leftist. And this is exactly why. I'm not going to salute the flag and talk about liberty and justice for all when I know that it's been liberty and justice for all of those who are white. Now, the Supreme Court had a case on this. It's a great case. You should look it up. It's Barnett versus the West Virginia Board of Education. 1943. Right in the middle of World War II. And everybody would have been reasonable to think that in the middle of World War II, that the Supreme Court would say, you have to pledge allegiance to the flag when you're in one of these public situations like school. This was school. But they didn't say it. They said the opposite. They said that it's perfectly okay to not pledge allegiance to the flag because we have free speech in this country and we don't force people to say things that they don't want to say. And that was in the middle of World War II. And you had to really look at the court and say, you know, thank you for being honest to our real principles. It's not a matter of not loving the country. It's a matter of not following the country blindly when the country might be doing crazy things. You know what Hitler did? He had those people in Nuremberg screaming hysterically with swastika covered flags. And, you know, some of us just don't want to go down that road. I never wanted to go down that road. I've always been concerned about this. This is bad business for a country. Because if the country does wrong, then you want to acknowledge that it's wrong. But of course, it's beyond that now. You know what Hillary said? And this, I was talking to my brother over the weekend, and we were saying, you know, when Hillary said it, it definitely did not help her. But it was true. Deplorables. She was right. You know, if you're following Hitler to the edge of the earth, that is deplorable. Now, it's different if you just have a separate point of view. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going down a path toward fascism. That's what we're talking about. There are people out here who absolutely say that democracy doesn't work because Donald has convinced them. And I don't know what Donald believes. It doesn't really matter because he doesn't know what he's talking about anyway, as discussed over the weekend by Mary Trump, who knows well what Donald is capable of in her family. But now he's injected this into our families. That's the problem. And there are people out here who will follow this without any hesitation. They're ready to go. Some of them are ready to go to a store or wherever they have to go to get their hands on AR or AK weapons, which they then want to start firing at everybody. Now, I understand that this guy shot at Donald or was planning to, but it's not just Donald. It's not just Donald. See, Donald has created this mess for himself. So, yeah, he better go hide somewhere because he's created a situation in which people who followed him and then don't like something he said are going to come running to get him. And then, of course, they want to get us too. They want to get everybody. They want to go get kids at school. That's deplorable. And this is a bad look for the United States of America. Now, I'll admit that we probably only have 50 more days of this, at least, you know, the way it is right now. It won't just disappear on day 51, but we can knock it down a little bit. We can do that because we're not all responsible for this, like that liberal lady said on MSNBC this afternoon. We're not all responsible. You know, when Hillary Clinton says that somebody's a deplorable, that has nothing to do with pushing somebody over the edge to shooting you, which, by the way, like we've recognized here, I mean, they thought Hillary was eating children in the pizzeria, in the basement, of course, but yeah, in the pizzeria. Just imagine how many millions of American people thought that she was eating children in the pizzeria. Then that one guy went in and wanted to shoot the whole place up. This is not coming from the left. This is not coming from educated people with masters and PhD degrees who go to college, read books, read newspapers. This is coming from crazies who will apparently believe anything the way the Germans believed Hitler. I think we're in a great place where we're going to escape having to learn how far these people would really go, because Donald will disappear off of our radar. He may be screaming at the moon in jail, you know, in one of those little trailers that Comey said we should set up at Rikers, and then just put him in there. Let him sit in that trailer, and everything will be fine. We'll put some Secret Service agents around him, and everything will work out great. It will be interesting to see what comes when Judge Merchan sentences Donald after we're done with this election, which will be run like every American election, very smoothly, very honestly. You know, the various secretaries of state has said that the 2020 election might have been the fairest and most honest election in American history, because everybody had their eyes on it constantly. There were no immigrants voting in our election. I mean, illegal immigrants. They don't do that. First of all, it's against the law. They don't do that. They don't break the law. In fact, they don't do anything bad because they don't want to be deported. Donald wants to deport them, which he has already said could be bloody. Isn't that cute? Threatening violence around this whole deportation issue. Where does that fit in? But look, it's so ridiculous. You don't even have to go there. All you have to do is go to the dogs and cats. I loved it. I mean, I could play it. I don't want to play it because I don't want to hear him saying that and even imagine the people are sitting around laughing, because I don't think it's funny. I think it's pathetic that I listened to him on Sunday look into that camera and say, "They're eating the dogs." How can anybody even stand to hear this? Especially when you know that nobody's eating the dogs. Nobody's eating the cats. Nobody's eating the geese. Nobody's eating anything that they're not supposed to be eating. And that's the end of the story. It's really pretty amazing what is going on, except that when I say that it's incredible that the American people have been sucked into this like the Germans were, which is partially true, I also have to add in this. The polls tell you what's happening. The American people are saying We don't want this. We've had enough. And in 50 days, when Kamala Harris wins this election, probably in a fairly big way, the result is going to be that Donald is going to claim all sorts of things, and his followers will go straight down the road on this story of it was rigged, the people are lying, the votes were harvested, all the kinds of crazy things they're saying. Now, remember this, and I mentioned this last week, and I want to make sure it's out here today. On October the 10th, so that's just a little under a month, there will be a trial in Georgia. And this is a trial that will decide if Donald has the right to intimidate poll workers in order to try to have all the elections in the states decertified so he can throw it in the House of Representatives and try to win an election that he's lost. Well, that's where he thinks it's headed. But see, it's not. Because we're not that messed up. We're messed up, but not that messed up. And I'll tell you that we have courts. And the courts are going to sort this out on October the 10th. And you watch. They're not going to allow this decertification nonsense. They're not crazy. Even the Donald Trump judges will not follow this path. We've already seen in the 11th district, they have twice gone after Aileen Cannon. And you know, that's another thing. Donald's running around the country saying that he won the toughest case of all, the documents case. And we all know that he didn't win anything. That case is now sitting in front of the 11th district. If the 11th district says it's thrown out and nothing else to talk about, then Donald will have won. It's not going to happen. This is the third time. And the last two times he said he had won. And the courts threw it right back into the courtroom and said, try this case. Now, in this instance, they are also probably going to throw Aileen Cannon out of this. So then you're going to have a real judge, and then Donald's going to have a real problem. That case is not gone. That case is very much alive. And we'll see what the 11th Circuit says after two other times, and this would be the third, that they've said Aileen Cannon can't do what she's saying she's doing. It's not what we do in our courts. So, okay, I'm off of all that for a minute. We'll see how long I stay off it. Right now, I want to go to a better one. This is really one of the best. Laura Loomer. Talk about deplorable. Whoo, this one's crazier than any of them. She has some really exciting things to say. She's a Nazi, neo-Nazi. And everybody knows she is really mentally ill. But the interesting part about it is that she's flying around the country with Donald Trump. Why? What is that about? Now, I have to say that it's crossed my mind that she and Donald have something going on. But you know what? I only heard it said this morning, and a bunch of people were saying it. And to Mika's credit, Mika Brzezinski, she didn't want to go there. She said, no, you don't know any of that. Nobody, that's not, leave that one out of it. We don't know it. And you know what? That's true. We don't know. There's no sense in going there because honestly, I don't care what he does. So, if he wants to do, I'm out of that one. But the problem is Donald is now saying, I don't know her. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. I don't know what she says. I'm not responsible for what she says. Don't look at me. I never heard of her. No, he really did said he said I don't know her. And I thought when he said I don't know her, that's pretty funny. She's on his airplane all the time. She's sitting with him on the airplane. So I think it's interesting that he's sitting with somebody on his airplane who he doesn't know. He said, I don't know her. And he says that about everybody. Everybody that gets accused of anything. I don't know them. Project 2025, I don't know them. Never heard of them. I mean, forget it. It's the Heritage Foundation. It's all of those people who worked in his administration. These are people who he picked to work for Trump. They now are writing Project 2025, and Donald says, I've never heard of them. I don't know a thing about them. He didn't know about QAnon. He didn't know about the neo-Nazis, good people on both sides, all that nonsense. Laura Loomer is a weirdo crackpot, and she's got some serious mental problems. And with that in mind, she's probably a great companion for Trump. Two people who belong in straitjackets, hanging out together, making up things that, unfortunately, millions of people in this country believe. This is serious. Here's one that Donald keeps saying. That Kamala Harris was in the White House for 3.5 years. Now she's got all these programs and policies and everything that she wants to do. And Donald says, she's been in office. Why didn't she do it if she wanted to? Why didn't she do it if she had these great ideas? And amazingly, no one has pushed back on this at all. None of the interviewers, none of the journalists, they just don't touch it. Because in the first place, if you're the vice president of the United States, you don't make policy. You have input. You can tell what you think, but you don't make policy. We talk all the time about what happened to Hubert Humphrey when he was the vice president under Lyndon Johnson. Humphrey was strongly against the war in Vietnam, but he kept it to himself because he was a loyal lieutenant for the president. That's the job of the vice president. And he quietly sat there in Washington, D.C., and took the beatings from the public. When Humphrey was in the meetings with Johnson, arguing against the war. But then when it was all over, Johnson would come out extending the war even further, and Hubert Humphrey had no choice. He went along with it because he was loyal. I mean, loyalty should have its limits, but Hubert Humphrey did it, and then he paid a price for it when he lost the election to Richard Nixon. And I hesitate to say by a whisker because you know who said that, but at any rate, it was just by a little bit, and he lost. And of course, he conceded because that was during the time when everybody lived on Earth One. And that's the story. But in all honesty, not only did Kamala Harris not have the ability to implement any kind of programs, but on top of all of that, she and Joe Biden faced resistance from Republicans in Congress, and as well, the efforts by Donald Trump to kill every deal, every good idea that they had. Now, I don't really begrudge them that, because as the opponent, that's what is often done. So I can see that one, although not on the border story, because, as you know, they made a deal with conservative Republicans who came up with a plan to defend the border, and Donald had the plan killed. Interestingly enough, I'm sort of glad they killed the plan, because I want those people to cross the border. I don't want anybody defending the border. I want the people to come across. Just like Ronald Reagan, amazingly enough. I didn't know that in the past, but he did have that exact position. We listened to it here on the air. So I'm just saying that Kamala is not responsible for what wasn't done for 3.5 years. And somebody should have said it at some point, and they haven't. But I'll tell you what I'd like you to do, and you probably know this. I'd like you to go to Wendy's for dinner. Wendy's is at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, and that's in Chesterfield Valley. They've got wings. They've got terrific smoked meats. They've got hamburgers, cheeseburgers, patty melts with loads of onions. They've got salads. They've got drinks. The best iced tea you're ever going to find. Other people tell me that their other drinks are equally excellent. And on top of all of that, they've got great pizza. And they got baby back ribs with onion rings, which I love. And you can't go wrong with all of that great food at Wendy's. 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, only matched by Wendy's Roadhouse, which is in Defiance at $29.99, South Highway 94. So any way you cut it, Wendy's in Defiance, Wendy's in Chesterfield. It's all great food, great prices, good people. Wendy's. Now, if you're looking for jewelry, well, then you go to 4506 Hampton. You go to see Al and AJ and all the great people there. A lot of people there that work for Al, for Jules on Hampton. And they have cases and cases of jewelry. It's huge. They buy and sell jewelry and coins. And on top of it all, they repair watches. They're expert watch repair people. They do a fine job. It's a great jewelry store. You'll love it. I know. I go in there like I did a couple of days ago, and there were people there with Al. I could hardly get near Al. The people love him. That is the truth. 4506 Hampton. That is Jewels on Hampton. You'll love their jewelry. Now, when it comes to excellent clothing, well, you just go to Clayton and you go to the corner of Central and Forsyth, and you will run into really excellent people there. Jay and Nick and the whole family. They're all there all the time. They'll help you buy your suits, buy your overcoats. It's going to get cold soon. And they've got it all. They'll help you with your wedding attire. If you're getting married, they'll take care of that for you. They're really good. They've been there for 30 years, since 1994, on the corner of Central and Forsyth. And they're still there, and they'll be there for a lot longer because they are just a fine place to buy men's clothing. And on top of it all, they've got those $5 ties that are terrific. I mean, talk yourself into it. Say, I'm just going to go down and buy one of those ties. But you'll look at all the good clothing too. And the prices are good on everything, but nothing as great as those $5 ties. But what is great is the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. Always great. 30 years worth. Okay. So there's never a lack of stupidity when it comes to Trump and his people. And here's his latest. Now, I'll grant you that this came from Laura Loomer, but you don't hear Donald saying anything against it. And in fact, and this is really amazing, just goes to show you what a person will do. You know, J.D. Vance is married to an Indian woman. And so you would think that he would defend her at all costs, all the time. I mean, you would expect that. But if you did, you wouldn't get it. Because Laura Loomer came up with a great story, which is that if Kamala becomes president, that the White House will smell like curry. Now, in the first place, you talk about racism. I mean, give me a break. Who talks about people this way? I mean, the crazies on the right will do it, of course. They always do it. It's very easy for them. They feel very comfortable with it. So they have said, yeah, it's going to smell like curry. But if you're married to an Indian woman and you're on national television and you're asked by the interviewer, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good way to talk about Kamala being Indian? He had no problem with it. None at all. He made it very clear. He said he makes some kind of great curry chicken or something. I don't know. But that was supposed to mean something. And then he said this, and nobody has said a word about it. But it was so like what they always do, which is doubling down on their basic racism, because he then said, I don't care if it's curry or if it's fried chicken. Really? So he had to get her on both counts. I mean, such stereotypes, such miserable language, such racism, such obvious attacks on a person's ethnicity, making fun of just what they eat. Not really, it was very bad. I mean, nobody jumped back on him over it, and that's okay. They jumped on him about the curry, but I just thought it was terrible. I just don't understand why some people can listen to this day after day after day, and it doesn't even affect them. They just go right along with it like it doesn't mean a thing. But I will tell you this. It means something what the voters are thinking and what they're going to say in about 50 days. And if the polls keep going in the direction that they're in right now, this thing could be wrapped up in 2-3 weeks. Now, I know Kamala and those people will never say it's anything but close, because they don't want to get into the Hillary Clinton kind of thing where people begin to think they've got it made and then walk away from it. And it turns out that they should have worked the last 2 or 3 weeks. I understand all that. And no one wants to be complacent. Being smug at this point is not smart. So they're not going to do it. But I will say that this election is headed in an amazing direction. And I think that when we see it at the end, it amazed me. I talked to some black people today. These are grown-ups. And they were telling me about all the black people who are going to vote for Trump. And I thought to myself, you'll believe anything, won't you? And these are black people who are not pro-Trump, but who believe that black people are all running to Trump because Trump says he's going to get 27% of the vote. You watch. 5 to 10%. That's what he's going to get. If it's 11, sue me. But I'm telling you, 5 to 10%, that's where this is going to be. Black people aren't going for this. As I've said so many times, black people are not stupid. Women are not stupid. Young people are not stupid. No, this is not going to end in any other way except for a win for Kamala and then the usual denial from Donald. Donald will say, I won by a landslide, but we didn't have any votes, but I won by a landslide. That's what you're going to hear. And we're going to watch that trial on October 10th. I can guarantee you we're going to watch it. And I hope you'll watch it on TV during the day. And I want you to listen to what Donald is trying to do, because he would love to rig this election. Now, he won't. The courts are going to stop it. But he would love to do it if he could. He believes that somebody is rigging it. That's why he always loses. But isn't it funny how other people win, even some people on his side, but then he loses. And then he says it's being rigged. It's all a trick to destroy Donald Trump. But I can tell you this, these polls today are huge. 52 to 46 nationally. That's a 6-point lead nationally. Nobody has led by 6 points. Nobody. Not in any direction. And Kamala has quickly bounced to 52-46 and then grabbed all of this support in these swing states. This is very big. I understand there are deplorables or whatever you'd like to call them. We could be nice. I mean, calling them deplorable isn't nice, but Hillary was right. Now, it still doesn't rise to a level that would cause people to kill one another. I mean, that's something else that's going on out here. And I have said so many times, the killing will stop when our people get so fed up because somebody dies that shouldn't. Now, don't get me wrong. Nobody should have died. But there's somebody out there that the people are going to be so furious about that they're going to say, get these guns out of here. I do believe that's coming. We'll see. So far, obviously not. So far, people are willing to live with their guns, knowing that their kids are on their way to school and might not come home alive. But they're willing to put up with that. So far. There's a day that'll stop. I just don't know when. Yeah, I can't imagine what it is. But there's something. There is something that will stop this mess. Because people don't want their families to go down this path. They don't want it. Now, by the way, as we reach the end of today's show, I do want to throw in a couple final words about a little economic information. You know that we've got a decision coming from the Federal Reserve on interest rates. And everybody pretty much agrees at this point that the rates will be dropped at least a quarter of a point. I would think that it'll be a quarter. If it's a half, I think, everybody would celebrate. If it's a quarter, maybe a little less celebration. This is a market that's got some problems. It does. It's just narrow. And it's still narrow. And it's not healthy. But it's separate from everything else. It's just, yeah, I'm not going to get into it. I don't even have enough time to get into it. But I will mention this about Donald's great, I hate to say this, but we'll call it Donald's great company. Trump Media and Technology. Give me a break. They have no media and they have no technology, but they do have that crazy, whatever you call it, where they post. And of course, nobody posts. And he loses money and a lot of it. But when Donald said last week that he wouldn't sell on the 20th because the stock was going straight down, and if he did try to sell on the 20th, it would have been $1 a share. But of course, remember, he lies, so don't forget that. But at any rate, he said he won't sell, and the stock jumped immediately $4 a share, and guess what? It's already given up more than $3 out of the 4, back to 17, on the way to the low, still headed for $1. You watch. Okay. This is Showdown, of course, brought to you by Jules on Hampton and Wenty's and the St. Louis Suit Company. I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown. Ray Hartman on with me tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Stay tuned. Good night.